Well, what's going on, everybody? Sorry my audio is going to be bad because, just like everything else, things aren't working the way they're supposed to. Right before I went live, this video or the software I used just crashed, so I had to restart the entire computer. When I did that, something happened with the sound, and so my wonderful soundboard isn't working. You know, it's just another thing. It's kind of crazy, bruh. It's crazy. This whole this whole weekend has been one giant blur. Okay, as you guys can see, I'm in the store, back in the old office. We found someone to sublease the warehouse for the next year, while I still have the other warehouse up there now that's just full of all the gym equipment. But it's been an interesting weekend from our Friday coverage of, we all thought there were going to be riots and things transpiring on Friday. Luckily, there weren't any riots. I mean, there wasn't a lot. It wasn't what everyone was I would even hazard to say hoping for, which is sad that now people hope that there's going to be riots. It's almost like mainstream media put so much. I would say that the massive amount of publicity on the prospect of riots actually helped quell any potential riotous behavior, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? I think the media, it was so hyper focused on it, and it's kind of weird because right now you have a situation where it seems like they're going. All right, so let me go back. So Tyre Nichols was brutally murdered. I believe it was January 7th by 5 African-American Memphis police officers, okay? Now, there's a lot of conversation about whether this is, because he worked at FedEx, was he banging one of the cops' baby mamas? I've seen all those rumors online, and everybody's reporting them as if it's fact, except there's no fact to actually back any of that shit up. It's all hyperbole right now. So nobody knows what actually transpired outside of, the people involved, right? So we know that these 5 police officers were captured on video absolutely brutalizing this man, beating him severely. Far worse than I've ever seen. And I even said that day, I was like, if I wasn't the type of person that I was, I would contemplate going out and smashing up someone. Yeah, I was mad. I was mad when I watched that video because for so long I've had this universal approval of police. Where police officers always get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to me. Just because of my family, my friends, people that I associate with, and frankly my life. That those I always give police officers the benefit of the doubt. Anyone who's watched me for a long time, that. I've been giving police officers the benefit of the doubt for forever. I don't know if I'm going to do that anymore, to be honest. I don't know if I can, because of watching this video, it wasn't just like, you could always make the argument that there's a bad apple, right? That it's just one person, right? Or even 2 officers, or, that you have this argument that it's a bad apple. There's bad apples everywhere. You got drunk pilots and, scumbag teachers and shitty truck drivers that are high on meth. We've gone through all those examples over the past 2 years. We've gone through all of the possibilities, and the easiest thing to say is there's just bad apples out there. But that video wasn't just one bad apple or 2 bad apples. It was the entire tree. It was the entire apple tree, or in fact, orchard. You know what I mean? And from the very beginning, from the moment they had that car stopped, I was incredibly taken aback by how the police officers were acting, and not in a good way. Those police officers, I can't say that I would have had a different response than Tyre Nichols. I'll be honest with you. By the way the police were acting towards him from the very beginning, from them, telling him that they're going to, what they say, we're going to body you or something, blast you, from the very beginning, to opening his door. Like, if it's a felony stop, right, which they were treating it like it was, if it's a felony stop, what the fuck are they doing opening the door and ripping him out of the door and throwing him on the ground, right? That in itself would have been something that would have just made me go like, what is going on? And in the fight or flight, effect is real. Some people run, some people fight, and it's, I watched that video and I saw how they interacted with him from the initial stop, and it caught me completely off guard. Because I for the first instance of one of these examples, where we have police involved shootings or something like that, for the first time ever, I was able to put myself into that person's shoes. You know what I mean? It's not about race. This isn't about race. Although CNN and Von Miller, whatever the hell his name is, Von Mason, whatever, CNN idiot, columnist, that wrote that stupid hit piece saying that, even though the officers were black, this is still an example of white supremacy. All the, same arguments. It's simply because, one, I find it hard for myself to be in the shoes of people, let's say Floyd, right? I can't put myself in his shoes. One, just because of the caliber of person he was. He held a gun to someone's, a pregnant woman's belly. The fact that he was high on drugs, the fact that he's doing drugs, the fact that he was being resistive with police officers, and the fact that he was just, being out there crazy. It was hard for me in that personal example to connect, you know what I mean? To feel, I know a lot of other people that are black people. They're like, well, it's easy for me to visualize that could have been me, right? And I always tell the story of the firefighter that worked out in the gym that I worked out in Florida. And when all the riots and everything were first occurring, I was asking him, like, has he ever been pulled over by police? And, does he feel like being pulled over by police is because he's black? And he said, yes, a ton. And I'm like, did you get, and I know he doesn't have a criminal record. He's a firefighter, and it led me to believe I've never once been pulled over and been like, he's pulling me over because I'm white. That's something I'm never going to be able to experience, right? And I could attribute that to a whole variety of other issues. One, I don't get pulled over because I don't do anything wrong. And two, if I did get pulled over, that wouldn't even pop in my head. However, there are families in this country that literally teach their children that, that you will get pulled over by police because, again, policing in our history hasn't been, the perfect thing that it's supposed to be, right? And that's I guess that's something that's frustrating. But this example with the Tyre Nichols, this example was different. This example was different because I don't understand it. For the life of me, I just don't understand it. Here, I'll try to restart the soundboard again, but I don't know what's going on. But I don't know. I don't understand why the police reacted that way. Like, the first body camera footage that you watched that day was of that Preston officer, the only white officer, right? And he was going to the scene. He's the one that deployed his taser that was ineffective. He's the one that reportedly said, I hope they stomp him, something like that, because he was fighting. He was resisting arrest at the scene. And nobody can argue that Tyre Nichols wasn't resisting arrest. But then again, I can't say I would have done anything different. I'll be honest with you. I can't say I would have done anything different because they didn't say what he did. They were being incredibly aggressive with it. They weren't even giving him clear and concise commands during that whole thing. And I know a lot of other people are going to say that they were, but let's be honest. They were not. See, yeah, it's just not connecting. I don't know why. I must have unplugged the cable. That's the only thing I can think. That's the only thing I can think of why it's not connecting. Huh, it's weird. It's weird. I don't care who you are, but it's weird. And I'm only at the first scene. I'm not even at the scene where they beat him to death, right? I'm not even at that scene yet. I'm only at the first scene. And even at that point, I was like, holy crap, they're being extremely aggressive, right? And then they're trying to restrain him. So you got one officer that's holding his arm down. You got another officer that's holding him, and they're pulling him in opposite directions. it's clear when you watch the video that they're clearly pulling these people in opposite directions, or they're pulling this guy in opposite directions, which means they're not going to be able to gain control of him, right? Well, technically they had control. They had one arm, they had the other arm, and then they're telling him to roll over so they could put his arms behind, or so he could be handcuffed. And what do? They say, stop resisting, and then they let go of his hand and pepper spray him. That's another thing that doesn't make sense. They let go of him. You know, they had constructive control over him. They had his arms. One officer was on one arm. One officer was on the other arm, while the taser cop was there trying to control legs. So you know that this was transpiring, and it's very weird, man. It's the whole thing. It's just very weird. You know, when you watch it, because you're like, why are they being this aggressive? Is this just how they police? Is this just that Scorpion unit and how they police in Memphis? Or is there something more? And that's why I think a lot of the speculation online is that there has to be something more to this, because otherwise it simply doesn't make sense. Otherwise, the only argument you have is that this guy was, or that these cops were just evil, like straight up evil. And I maintain they're evil, right? So they pepper spray him, but I guess the officer pepper sprayed himself in the face like an idiot. And Tyre Nichols was able to run away, right? And they catch him, you know, a few minutes later. And then the officer that pepper sprayed him in the face, he was mad. And he was a baby too about getting pepper sprayed. It's not that bad. I've been pepper sprayed before, and I didn't cry like a baby. That officer was. Anyway, then he got back in his Camaro or Charger, whatever the hell it was, and then he zipped over to the crime scene, or to the murder scene is what we're going to call it, which was the second scene. That was roughly 3 minutes or 3 blocks or something like that, 300 yards away from his mom's house, where that body camera footage, or it wasn't body camera, that was the Crime Stopper footage. That was like a light post camera that captured everything, like surveillance footage. And it just opens up where you see the lights, and I'm like, what is going on? Because you see all the lights, but you don't see anything, and it takes about 40 seconds. And then it pans too far, and then it pans back. And then you look, and they're beating the crap out of this guy. They keep, I'm assuming they're saying, stop resisting, and all the same rhetoric that they were doing in the earlier videos. But they were, you had one big fat slob of a pig, like fat slobby pig officer that goes and literally kicks him in the head. I watched that. I had to pause it because I'm like, man, I saw it and I was like, I can't believe this. But it wasn't even done. They kick him several times. The guy with a baton then pulls out a baton, starts hitting him several times. They're loading him up with mace and pepper spray. And then they pick him up off of the ground. And a lot of people are like, well, he was still resisting. He was still fighting. Nah, they picked him up off of the ground, held his arms behind him while one guy offloaded on him, hitting him 4 or 5 times. Then they finally get him in handcuffs, lean him up against the car. All of those people, and there were more officers involved than even the 2 sheriffs that are on suspension. The one other officer who was fired today, I believe, which was a white officer, and we'll get to that in a little bit, because they're doing this because Ben Crump and because of public outrage that a white officer was in charge. I'm not joking. That the white officer that I believe, the guy that tased him in the beginning, never went to that scene. He was not one of the people that was at that scene. He was staying with the car. So, and that's a crazy, because there did appear to be a white dude or a light-skinned guy that went over while they were still trying to detain this guy that were holding, or Nichols, while they were holding on, in that officer, either a light-skinned dude or a white guy, which was not one of the 5 that was arrested, was holding on to his feet, And I said, as soon as I came on that night, I said everyone there needs to be arrested. I said the firefighters, because that was one of the most obscene things I ever saw. And it's funny because I'm arguing on Twitter with someone that says they're a retired cop that doesn't understand when a scene is transitioned. So it doesn't matter if it's an active crime scene. If you call in EMTs, if you declare the scene is safe, that person, that patient, becomes the EMT's patient. And trust me, I know from experience. If you go and you go to a scene, and even if it's a volatile scene, even if the person, as long as that person is restrained, that person goes. You can argue with the cops all you want, but I've taken patients. I literally had to restrain a cop at a crime scene, not because he was telling us we couldn't leave. He was in shock because someone was carrying a leg down the road. But it's crazy, dude. The whole thing is crazy. Now we've learned that the Memphis Fire Department has fired the 3 firefighter EMTs that were on scene. Rightfully so. I said it that night. I said they all need to be charged. The firefighters and EMTs. You know, a lot, like one bonehead got on Twitter and said, well, what do you expect them to do? You know, he was breathing on his own. They're not going to do an OPA or NPA. Oh, so you know what, a nasal pharynx, airway is. Oh, aren't you special? There are a lot of things that firefighters and medics and EMTs, people that render care, if you see a dude's face is all screwed up, right? And he's got a unusual LOC, so his level of consciousness is in and out. Remember, he kept falling over? At that point, it would deem very, very important to transport him to the hospital. They didn't do it. And for anyone that wants to argue saying they didn't have control over that patient or they didn't have the right or the police were restricting their ability to do so, you don't understand how it works. And I don't care if you're a cop and you believe that an EMT that comes on scene doesn't have the right to make a determination of what happens to that patient. Good luck with that, because you'll end up going to court. That's the truth. That's the way it is. I know firsthand. That's how it is. Those paramedics, those firefighters, whatever they were, EMTs, they should be charged. They shouldn't just be fired. They should be charged because they didn't get on their radios and yell. They didn't start, yelling. You saw they were being all like blasé about it. They weren't like, shit. They literally looked at him with his busted up face and then stood around for about 10 minutes until they tried to clean it up. Until they tried to clean up his face a little bit, and then probably saw they had orbital bone fractures and whatever else was going on with his face. It's crazy to me, and it's crazy to me that so many people are like, well, no, here's the thing. The white officer, based on what I saw, unless there's something else, the white officer that was there in the morning that did the taser, I don't know why he's being charged. He hasn't been charged, but he was fired. I don't know why he's being fired. Well, yes, I do. I know why he's being fired or under investigation or suspended without pay or whatever the hell his condition is. But everyone on social media is calling for him to be, charged as well, charged with the murder. He wasn't at the murder scene. He wasn't at the second scene. He was still with the car. You're trying to say that he's not allowed to deploy a taser while someone is actively fighting? Because to me, Tyre Nichols was actively fighting with police, although my personal opinion is that police were working against each other, which is why they couldn't get him into custody. But he was clearly actively fighting, and the taser wasn't even deployed until he was already up and running. And that's where this whole, story comes in about him reaching for a gun. I'll be honest, I watched the body camera footage again, trying to find that instance where they grabbed the gun or grabbed for the gun, and I didn't see it. And I didn't watch the poll camera footage again because I didn't want to see him getting his face kicked in. So I don't know if that's where it happened, but based on what they were saying on body cam 4, they were making it seem like he grabbed for the gun at the first scene. I didn't see that in that video. All I saw is a man that was frightened out of his mind, probably high on drugs, probably on PCP or whatever gives you, stupid strength, because he was a small guy and they couldn't get him under control, and they were bigger officers. But I don't know why they're, outside of the fact that the white cop, the Preston cop or whatever, is a white dude. There's no reason. There's no reason for them to go after this guy and say that he's culpable for anything that happened, because it looks to me like he followed whatever procedures they have in place. He didn't deploy his taser until Nichols was up and trying to run away. At that point, that would be something. He was fighting cops at that point. You know what I mean? Whether or not you agree that they had the right, and I've already said, I probably would do the same thing that he did that day. I probably would have. If the cops came at me like that, as much as I respect, law enforcement, if police came at me like that, I don't know if I could do it. Someone said 6 officers were charged with various offenses. Oh, you're reading something, or you're talking about something else. You're talking about the Baltimore thing, right? Freddie Gray? Yeah, that's a different thing. Someone said, not if they didn't commit a crime. Should we arrest you even if you didn't commit a crime? Don't be stupid. Yeah, see, I don't know what you're saying, but they're trying to detain him for a crime that's committed. And here's or a crime that they allege was committed, right? They said there were violations. We heard in the body camera footage that he was swerving towards officers, all this stuff that hasn't come out yet. We don't know any of that. The only thing that we know is that one, the cops killed him, and secondly, is the statements, whether we know they're true or not, we don't know, came from the police. So saying that he was swerving his car while they were trying to get him to stop, and then finally he stops at the intersection, turns his lights on, or his blinker on, and that's when the cops surround him to take him into custody. I'm not saying that what they did was justified. Okay, by any means, I would have reacted the same way. If a cop tries to drag me out of my car without saying anything, without doing anything, without, any sort of warning, I'm not going to assume he's a cop. I'm going to assume he's anybody else that's trying to rob me or carjack me or anything else, especially in Memphis or any of these big cities. You know what I mean? He's in an undercover cop car. He's plain clothes, just wearing, a police vest. You know what I mean? There's so many different scenarios that could pop into your head and say, well, this wasn't handled right. I don't know, man. But the fact of the matter is, these cops literally beat this dude to death. They beat this, and the fact that they're all walking the street right now, the 5 that have been charged, is like an offense to everything that I've believed in, you know what I mean? And everything we argue for, there's no reason that these officers should be out of jail right now, because the evidence against them is clear as day. That's the craziest part to me. The evidence against these officers, based on the videos, there's no justification for kicking a man in the head while 3 other officers hold him. There's no justification for 2, officers holding him while one guy just, is repeatedly punching him in the face. There's no justification for that. And these officers should and should be held accountable. They shouldn't be released. And that's my belief. I know a lot of people disagree. I know a lot of people are like, well, no, actually, nobody disagrees with the fact that these officers, I see a lot of like due process or the argument that he shouldn't have resisted. He should have just complied. This would have never happened if he just complied. None of us actually know that. And based off the officer's initial actions, none of us can even guarantee that. Based on how they responded to him in the beginning, I'm not going to say that he would have been fine if he didn't, freak out a little bit in the beginning and then flee from that. I'm not going to say that he would have been fine, because based on the police officer's initial reaction, I don't come to that conclusion. I feel like he would have gotten beat up regardless. Based on what I saw, man, that's me. And you guys know, anyone who watches me for a long time, someone said, we don't know that they started off very aggressive. Yes, we do. It was in the body camera footage. Yes, we do. We absolutely do. And I showed it on Friday as well. I showed that first body camera footage while, they pulled him out of the car. We know that the police were incredibly aggressive. We don't know what transpired between the time of the initial interaction and the time that the police came to him, stopped at that intersection with his blinker on. We don't know what transpired there. We don't know if there's any truth to him swerving into officers. We don't know if there are any calls. Actually, the Memphis Police Department police chief said that there were no calls for reckless driving, which, the police officer said they were responding to reckless driving calls. But that's the truth. Those officers in the beginning, when they pulled him out of that vehicle, they were incredibly aggressive, far more aggressive. And I think anybody that would have just sat there and say, well, they weren't aggressive. Imagine that was your kid. Imagine that was your son or your daughter that just pulled out, or you that was just pulled out of a vehicle like that when you don't even know what you did. Nothing was even announced. In fact, they said, move and we're going to blast you. And then while another guy opens the door and forcefully rips you out of the car. No, fuck that. I'll be honest. If that happens to me, I'm fighting, because I want to live. I want to live. And that's the truth, And I think it's, for one, the video is really hard to watch. So I don't blame anyone for missing something. You know what I mean? I had to pause it and take breaks because it was upsetting. But I don't blame people if you've missed something, but don't come in the chat and be like, well, they weren't aggressive when they pulled him over, because they actually very much were. And nobody can say that they weren't. You could make an argument and say, okay, if we had evidence that he shot at police officers in the beginning, well, then maybe there's a justifiable response, right? But would that be justifiable? No, because at that point, you would think he had a gun. That's another instance, too, where you take all that into consideration. They blocked in his car from the front. They blocked in opposing traffic on the driver's side and blocked it in from the back. But they weren't conducting it like it was a felony stop because they didn't worry that it's almost like they knew he didn't have a gun. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like they knew he didn't have a gun because you wouldn't run. You know what I mean? Someone said it would be dumb to fight if he would have got on his stomach and cuffed up, he'd still be alive. Reef Keeper, you didn't watch the video. He was on his stomach. He was on his stomach. Like, listen, dude, I watched the video. He was on his stomach. One officer had an arm up like this that was pulling this way. The other officer had an arm like this that was pulling on the other side, which kept him on his side. Anybody who's ever restrained anybody, if you've ever worked security or, did any sort of martial arts, you understand. You're not going to be able to get the guy to comply if you got one guy pulling his arm this way, one guy pulling the arm this way. You can't give him orders and tell him to roll over on his stomach if you're pulling him the opposite directions. And that was clear in the video. And I mean, like, you can't make it up. That's what was there. I know it's easy to say, well, or to make a conclusion, but we have video. You're not going to be able to go out of this. These officers are not going to be found not guilty. I don't think any jury in America would feel that these officers were justified in what they did. The initial confrontation, whatever, that's something different. Like for me, like I said, that would, I don't know what I would do. I really don't. But I don't know if I would just allow myself to be dragged out of a vehicle. You know what I mean? I really don't. If there was a vehicle out there where it said like Memphis, like it was clearly marked Memphis Police, maybe. You know what I mean? But these weren't. These were all unmarked cars. They all had like the little lights in them, and all the officers were plainclothes. We hear it all the time about carjackings and all that. They're just, it's sad, man. It's sad. The operator, one of the audio said he was giving him straight haymakers, dude. Yeah. And the other guy was talking about beating him with a baton. I mean, it was one of the most disturbing videos I think I've ever watched when it came to all this. And the thing is, I watched that video and I was completely certain that there were going to be riots that night. And for whatever reason, there were marches and stuff. And I think even largely the whole crowd, well, I knew early on, right? As soon as we were watching the protests, they blocked the interstate. That sucks. They shouldn't have done that. And you know how I feel. Anybody who blocks an interstate should be arrested. Oh, you know what? Something's going on because even this doesn't have power. So something on this thing is screwed up. But how does everything else? Because even my audio or my video switcher doesn't even have power, and it's plugged in too. So, something's unplugged, and I don't know what it is. But maybe that's why the sound is messed up. Maybe I unplugged it from the back of there. But I've been moving stuff around, trying to get. I got the chairs back there and all the other lighting. If I want to do a show there, I can just zoom in and just sit there and move this mic over. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. Someone said the white cop egged it on, said, I hope he gets stomped. Yeah, he said that to one guy and he wasn't even at the scene. You could say the white cop egged it on, but I don't believe that white cop egged it on. I don't. Did the white cop have a poor choice of words? Probably, but he wasn't even there. And he wasn't on the radio saying, guys, stomp him. Nah, he wasn't. He was talking to another officer and both of them just had mouthfuls of their own pepper spray. You know what I mean? How many times have we on this show said, man, I hope that dude gets punched in the mouth when we're watching the riots or something like that? How many? But the fact of the matter is that white cop, the Preston or whatever the hell his name is, he wasn't at the scene to the best of my knowledge. So how are you going to charge him for the death? You could charge him for like wrongful use of a taser, whatever they did in Atlanta. Remember They charged the officers that were that tased the two black people that were in the car. They charged those officers for it, and then later on, and said that it was assault with a deadly weapon when the police officers tased those two people in the car in Atlanta, Georgia. And then just like I think Rashard Brooks happened like 2 weeks after that, and they said at that point if a police officer uses a taser, it's an assault with a deadly weapon. If Rashard Brooks points a taser at an officer, it's not assault with a deadly weapon, or deploys a taser towards an officer. And that's why, I mean, the situation from 2020 versus now is completely different. I think the elements actually saved a little bit. There was some looting that took place in Memphis on Monday night or Friday night, Saturday morning. Not a lot, but there was some looting. There was more looting, I think, that occurred last night than there was in Memphis the night before. I know when we were watching the protest, I knew pretty quick that there wasn't going to be that insane kind of violence that we saw in 2020, simply because you didn't see a lot of black bloc out there. In Los Angeles, after we ended the live stream in Los Angeles, the black bloc came right as my video live stream cut off. Right around that same time, that's when Black Bloc went out and they spray painted the police station. Riot police had to come out and that kind of stuff. And there's a little back and forth, but not a tremendous amount of property damage that night either. I think Seattle, Art Kruger again said it came out that the cops are gang members. No, you watched it or you saw that from an unverified account on Twitter. I did too. I saw the original tweet, and who knows, that could be real, but it's unverified. And what you guys should all do, especially now that there's a shit ton of information that's coming out, most of it's unverified, most of it's bullshit. So don't repeat it until it's verified. The whole thing about them being gang members or GDs or whatever that the things are, it's not true. We don't know. You don't know any of that. That was by a fake reporter, I think a podcast reporter that originally wrote that. You know what I mean? So and that's the thing. That's why and that's the biggest thing that everyone has to do. Just stop believing the random shit you see on social media. Believe it from real sources. Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing I'm never going to do is I'm never going to be the guy that spread. Someone said they sure did talk like street dudes. They from Memphis. Have you never talked to anybody from Memphis? Retro Habit? Because they sounded a lot more educated than the last guy we covered from Memphis. That gangbanger that was going around shooting all the people at random. Remember that? Try to decipher what that dude was saying in his video when he was going around killing all those people. But the Art Kruger said real sources. Yeah, any actual source that's like a verified real account, like not some bot account on Twitter. I saw the same tweet. It was some fucking podcast writer. It wasn't even a podcast host. It was like a podcast writer that was putting out that they have or they're working to verify information from confidential sources that these police that were arrested were all gang members and that the gangs are control the jails. And they watched an episode of Mayor of Kingstown, and then they decided to write this big tweet with this elaborate story. And nobody should write that. Nobody should do that anymore. Just really try not to, at least in my chat, try to be respectful and only put actual verified information. Someone said, I'm just getting here, but are we tiptoeing around this? What are we tiptoeing around? I don't think we're tiptoeing around anything right now. We're being forthright, talking about the facts. We're not talking about anything else. The police brutally murdered this man. And that's it. That's the truth. There's no excuse for it. There's no justification for it. Not at all. The police, brutally murdered him. And just like I said on Friday night, everybody should be arrested. The lieutenant, everybody that was there in the first 20 minutes until he was picked up by the EMTs and transported to the hospital in critical condition. Everybody that was there that didn't render emergency medical aid to that man, who you could clearly see on the video, even from afar, you could clearly see that he was suffering and he had severe wounds. Do you know what I mean? And that's the truth. Maya Papaya said, Steve, do you know if Tyree had a record? You heard he did not. Well, that's what I've heard too. I don't believe he did have a record. I don't believe he did have a record at all, you know. And it's sad, man. A lot of people are just rushing to judgment on this whole thing, and maybe it's just because I'm just let down, man. Someone said, "Do you know somebody is running your stream on there?" It's cool. Anyone who's doing that, you're welcome. Just go and plug my coffee company real quick, you know. But yeah, I don't care. I don't really care if anyone ever grabs my stream. I mean, I'm a restreamer anyway when I cover protests. I don't care if people do it, even if they're providing stupid commentary. As long as they leave up when I mention Pure Truth Coffee, the best coffee company in the world. Like, I don't care. They can talk whatever they want. Joe Lynn said some black people want black policing. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, man. We're not going to be able to figure out what... It's weird because you had mixed messages when people were marching up and down the streets. Because at this point, you can't defund the police. Because what do you want? Look at what happened in Lakeland, Florida today. You know, what was it? A black Nissan Altima drove up the street in broad daylight while 4 people hung out of every single window of that vehicle, shooting random people or shooting people at each side of the street. That's broad daylight. In Lakeland County, you know, the sheriff is talking about it. He's like, we don't have those kind of stuff here. The fuck you don't. You know how many mass shootings have occurred in Lakeland County, you know, in the past couple of years? A shit ton. We talk about it all the time. There's always shootings, and there's gangs, and you know, the reporters were hinting that the social media stuff is talking about a drug war between 2 rival gangs, and you know, the media's not going to talk about it. There's 2 people in critical condition, 7 others wounded. Sure, we may hear just because it's dramatic, right? People hanging out of the window shooting, but we're not going to hear about those victims. We're not going to hear about any of that. And how do you stop that kind of action? Like, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, we need to get rid of cops. No, you know, cops shouldn't be armed. How do you stop a bunch of criminals with guns? Usually the only way you could stop them is with guns. Do you know what I mean? That's it. I don't know any other way. And if you have a problem with police being undertrained, how about you fund the police? Fund additional training, fund sensitivity training, fund specialized training, and all this stuff. You know what I mean? It was the same thing when I was on the fire department. We had firefighters that were not fit, not physically able to do the job. And yet they were on there because they were, you know, firefighters for 20 plus years. And they would still do interior. You know, it never made any sense to me. Where as a new hire, I had to go through a strict physical regimen, but, you know, supervisors and shit like that, lieutenants, didn't have to. You know, they barely could get out of the damn chair. You know, they had a special chair that was theirs. You know, these fat, lazy slobs, bro. Whenever we got a call, literally, we'd be all dressed waiting for them to come, and then come strolling out, slow as hell, get on the engine, and then command to do all that stuff and tell everybody what to do. I hate it. You know? Becky Marquez said, I say hire ex-military so they can handle if they spray themselves in the face and not take it out on a skinny guy. Yeah, I mean... It's not even, you know, probably, I don't know the background of these officers, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are military. I mean, we see military people not being able to handle those types of jobs. I mean, shit. There's a reason I'm not a cop. I'm a freaking angry dude. You know what I mean? There's no way I could be a cop because I would get in trouble. I already know myself. I'm not someone that's going to let someone talk down to me. Like, how many of you guys watched Live on Patrol this weekend where the people are yelling at the cops and the cops are just standing there? Or that white dude was saying all the racist shit. I think that was a Florida county too. He's saying all the racist stuff, telling them to pick up the vest and saying, boy this, boy that. There's no way. And the officers at Daytona Beach, that's where it was. But the officers, like, afterwards, they're like, man, way to handle that. There's no way. There's no way I could do it. I could never have someone talk to me like that. Someone said, I want to see the before footage of this whole situation. Yeah, I mean, you should. Everybody should. But you know what everyone else should do, too? What time is it? It's 8:42. So all you haters that are always like, he's talking about his shit all the time. What I need everybody to do is go and buy a Patriotic as F bundle or a coffee yearly plan. Join the club. Buy whatever you can. I put out a new hoodie today. I can't show you because my system's not working. So when I try to switch over to this screen, it's just that. See, this whole thing's fucked up. Everything. This doesn't even have the overlay. It's just not even there. I don't even get it. But go over to puretruthcoffee.com And if you click on Coffee Club, we have a monthly coffee club, 6-month prepaid plan, and a yearly prepaid plan, which gets huge discounts as well. Or if you do our patriotic as F ammo can bundle, we have a huge discount going on right now. Whereas if you pay for 10 months up front, you get the last 2 months free. You get a 20% discount on all future orders, and you can combine that with yearly coffee plan. So if you do the patriotic as F bundle and you then want, to have amazing coffee at essentially wholesale prices, you can do that, because then you're going to get 42% off every bag of coffee we have for life. And so it's pretty crazy. It actually brings our coffee prices down to like $9.99 per 12-ounce bag, which is just about less than it's just about what I pay for the coffee. Actually, I think it's less than the coffee, so I lose a little bit of money. But we have all those plans in the store, and we have a 6-month patriotic as F bundle as well that you guys can get. We'll be shipping out those real quick. Now that I got everything situated, my wife and kids came in last night and helped me arrange that room, because I was, when you reach that point of mental exhaustion, that's what I was. I literally called my wife on Saturday around 5 o'clock, and I said I needed her to come to the warehouse because I felt like I was going to pass out, and I could not work anymore. Like I couldn't go, and I've refused to drive home. So she had to come get me and drive me home, because I just worked myself to exhaustion. Doing everything and moving, doing shuttle runs and all the gym equipment, moving all that stuff. I was beat, man. I was beat. And then, so yesterday we went to breakfast, and it wasn't good. I'm not even going to say where it is, because I love the place. But it wasn't good. And then we came here, went back to the store, back to the warehouse, finished moving everything from that one warehouse to the other warehouse at the other side of the building, and then came here. And my kids were great, because they just wanted to play video games, but they were super helpful, and we got everything situated. Like, that was the one room I'm like, I just need that one situated so I could do all the coffee orders. So today I was packing coffee and getting all that done. Tomorrow all the coffee orders are going out. But I watched a YouTube video, and I saw a hoodie that one of the hosts was wearing, and it had some different logo on it, but it was orange on black. And I'm like, I'm doing that with the PT logo. So April's sharing that out right now. And it looks really good. Trust me, when it's printed, it looks really good. It's almost like a fluorescent, like orange. I really like it. So I was excited to make that logo today and put that on the hoodie. And I know we said we were doing drops once a month, but I couldn't wait. Because I wanted to order myself one, and so I screwed up and published it, and I was like, whatever. And just keep in mind, if you order a hoodie, you can add a mug to your cart, and the mug is completely free. You don't have to pay for anything. So, but that's it. We don't do K-Cups anymore. We tried to do K-Cups, but it's too hard. Because unlike a lot of other people, we actually package all of our coffee here. So in the store, because we're open during the day now, in the store, that's where we grind up all the coffee and we package it right there. The K-Cups are just too time intensive, so we can't do it. There were a couple other things I wanted to talk about. We already touched on the mass shooting that occurred. I don't know anything about this Israel attack on Iran, and I was really surprised at how little information is out about it. I think the Wall Street Journal has some reporting, but apparently Israel launched a drone attack on Iranian weapons depot or some crap like that. But the night it was all happening, I think it was Saturday night, it was all over Twitter. Everyone's like, holy crap, this is really happening, multiple locations, blah, blah, blah. And then it's since gone, and nobody's talking about it. And it's weird. It's just weird to me. Someone said Jerusalem was attacked, Steve. Are you talking about the 7 people that were shot in Jerusalem with a gunman? That was a couple of days ago. Yeah. Unless there was something that just happened while I've been live. I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me, because there's a lot. Yeah, 2 days ago, 9 killed in an attack on Jerusalem, sadly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why that matters more than the people that are killed here every single day. You know what I mean? I don't know why so many people focus on what's happening in other countries instead of what's happening here. You know what I mean? So is it insincere of me to say I of course I care about any life being lost, but I care more about the ones that are here. You know what I mean? I care about more, and when I say here, I'm not even talking about American citizens. I'm talking about people that are here. You know what I mean? And that's the truth. So I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. You know, I saw it too, and I'm like, oh well, a gunman opens fire and kills 9 people. This shit happens all the time here. It literally happened today, where a gunman opened fire and injured 9 people. It happens every single day in America, and we won't pay attention to it here. So why the heck would I care about it when it happens somewhere else? And I know how insincere that sounds, and I'm sorry, but that's the truth. I can't sugarcoat it. I can't pretend like I care about what's happening overseas. I can't care about what's happening in Ukraine and all the money that we're sending over to Ukrainians when I know Ukraine's history. I know that in our own Congress, we had provisions in our Congress to not allow funding to go to the Azov battalion in Ukraine as recently as 2019 because of the same accusations that Russia leveled against Ukraine. I'm not joking. Everyone could look that up. And you could say, well, that's it. They're reformed. You don't reform something like that in 2 years. You know what I mean? You just don't. You can't reform that in 2 years. And that's the truth. So it's hard for me to like relate to some of those other stuff. You know what I mean? It is. It's hard for me to relate and say, well, you know, you see the stuff that's going on overseas, and then you hear we have 50 migrants right now that are sleeping outside of a hotel in New York City because they're refusing to go to another free place that's done, and they need to kick them out of the hotel in New York City because they're all single adult males, and they want to put women and children in there. Other, you know, homeless, or not homeless. They're not even doing that for American citizens, which is the craziest freaking thing, right? If you're just a typical homeless, like, veteran, you know, sleeping on the streets in New York City, you're not going to get a, you know, $500 a night hotel in New York City, which is what the migrants were getting. And now the single adult males are refusing to go to this cruise ship terminal that's been retrofitted as a hotel. I care more about that. I care more about those people because, again, they're on United States soil. Oh man, I probably have such a weird liberal, you know, view on that. I don't know what it is. You know, I see it's frustrating to me because I want to be like, send them all back, but I don't mean it. You know what I mean? I don't. Because if they're already here, then we have a job as Americans, and we have a duty and a responsibility to care for people that are here until they leave, you know, until we can get them out legally. You know what I mean? But I'm not talking about like just throwing them across the border, you know, throwing them to the wolves. No, I don't know. I don't know, man. It's very weird, you know, but I also think we should be acting with force to secure our border to stop allowing people to cross into the country. And when I say with force, I mean with force, the same way other countries would. Other countries wouldn't let themselves be in. Can you imagine if United States citizens decided to do what the people that are coming to the southern border are doing to Canada? Can you imagine what those Canadian Mounties would do on their horsebacks and all that with their funny accents? Right, all the loggers would come out of the woods, whatever other Canadian stereotypes I could pull out right now. But seriously, can you imagine? For some reason, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people that the only way you're going to curb what's happening here in America in terms of our immigration crisis is by stopping the flow. It's like you can't fix a leaky water faucet without cutting off the water. It's a very simple solution. Someone said, we do not have a responsibility to house and feed invaders. Yes, we do. As much as that sucks, yes, you do. Yes, we do. You would house and feed a homeless person, right? And you do. Your taxpayer dollars do that anyway. Have you ever given money to the person that's holding a sign, you know, outside a Food Lion or outside of the grocery stores? If you do, or you ever have done that, then you felt some sort of responsibility. You felt some sort of need. You felt some sort of sympathy to do it. So when you say we don't have that responsibility, if you are human, if you are a good American, yes, you do have that responsibility. But for me, it would be like to house for a day. Get a nice clean clothes, you know, and an airline ticket to get the fuck out. until you're here legally, until you cross in legally. That's my belief. But someone said you can't renovate your neighbor's house if you're living in an S-hole. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Texas is sick of them. No one cares unless it's happening in their state. Yeah. Yeah. Someone said I have, but they didn't invade our country. It's funny because people see when Truth Slinger here, he said, when did you come a liberal or a Libby? He said. I don't think that's a liberal view. I still believe in a strong border. I still believe in everything. I just don't believe in, willfully hoping that people die. You know what I mean? Because in all reality, that's what happens. If you don't feed or house them, and yes, I believe that it should be expelled. If they're here illegally, they should be expelled. They didn't go through the proper process to be here illegally. If they're here illegally, they should be expelled. But while they're here, and while that process is taking place, which needs to be revamped so we can do it much quicker, we have an obligation to not let people die. You know what I mean? And that's my belief. And I think that's a liberal view? No, I think it's a human view. I don't think it's a liberal view. Most liberals would disagree because I don't believe that we should be providing housing for, I'm talking like a day or two, a week, give them a shower, give them clean clothes. You know how many people throw away clothes all the time? I keep getting bigger, so I got to keep throwing away all my clothes. My wife donates it all to charity. That's what we do. That's what people do. Why? I mean, what's it hurt? I mean, maybe you haven't been in that position, Maybe people haven't been in that. Someone said, I don't think you're indecent if you don't feed or house homeless people, LOL. I think people don't have any sympathy. That's just what I think. I think it's too easy to sit there and pass judgment or call someone a Libby and something like that. Someone said we can't help them legally. No, you absolutely can't. You can't, but the government can. And I'm not saying the government should. What I'm saying is that we as Americans have to realize that we have an obligation to help needy people, right? We have a history of doing it. Okay? And whether or not we like the process and whether or not we like that people are coming here in the way they're coming here, while they're here, well, see, it's weird because I don't believe in putting them up in hotels in New York City either. So I don't know. I think if people are really fortunate, I mean, here's the thing. We should want people to come to this country. It's the best country in the world, right? It's supposed to provide so much opportunity. And every single day I wake up and I'm like, why are people trying to get here? Look at the news. People are getting shot. CRT this, school this, right? Republican this, Rhino that. I mean, why would anybody want to come here in the first place? But I firmly believe that we have a responsibility to care for people that are here. I believe we have a responsibility to care for our homeless people. As much as I don't like the fact that there are homeless people that just won't work, that are fully capable of doing it, I offered one of the guys that was out there with his wife and his kids trying to make money, trying to spange, I'm homeless and hungry, blah, blah, blah. I offered him a job in the coffee shop. Can I afford to hire anybody to work here? Fuck no, I can't. But I offered him a job. He wouldn't work. He didn't want to work. Couldn't do it. Kept coming up with all these excuses. And that's the truth. Someone said, I don't agree of providing $500 a night hotel to them. They're illegally. They deserve a pop-up shelter, but the government needs to help our homeless people first. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Nobody should be in a hotel. And we've been doing this for a long time, putting them in hotels. It's been happening for over a year down in Texas. Whole hotels. Oil workers couldn't even get hotel rooms. They literally, actually, the oil field workers, where they had all sorts of the trailers and everything, the government was going to them and trying to rent them for the migrants instead of the oil workers. It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't believe that they should be, staying in luxury hotels or anything like that because, and to be honest, I don't even think, I think any single adult male that comes into this country should be immediately expelled. That's my belief. If you're coming by yourself as a single adult male, you shouldn't be here. Okay, for two reasons. One, you could say you're leaving to provide for your family. Nah, I could never leave my kids, like that. Secondly, chances of you being bad are just greater, right? That's my belief. But I'm on the record as saying I don't think kids that come across the border, by themselves should be. We have an obligation, all right? Whether or not people agree with it, I don't know. Is that a liberal view? I don't know. if that's a liberal view, then I guess I have one. Because I believe it's our job as Americans to care for other Americans and to care for other people, not even Americans, other people. But we should prioritize ours, and I've long maintained that. I don't believe we should send money to Ukraine because we have homeless people here. We have veterans sleeping out. I didn't believe we should open up Camp Pendleton to the Afghan refugees because we had veterans sleeping outside of that same very base that couldn't even use the services inside. I don't, and a lot of that is just common sense. You know what I mean? And I can say all the, I can say all I want and say, what I believe, us Americans, we have a duty to do this. But the fact is we're not doing, if you gotta put choosing an American, choosing a veteran, choosing anything like that over something else, it's always going to be the American. It's always going to be the veteran. You know what I mean? If I had to choose between, giving a sandwich to a woman immigrant and a man immigrant, the woman's getting sandwiched. Do you know what I mean? It's just that's how I prioritize things, and I believe everybody should help people. That's just what I believe. That's why we donate money. That's why my wife does everything she does, outside of work. That's just who we are. That's what we do. But it's I wish more people remember that, to be honest, because I don't think it's a liberal thing. I think it's just an American thing that you want to take care of people. I don't think it's liberal. That's my thought. I don't know what else, man. I had some videos, but they're not gonna play. I'll figure out this sound thing for tomorrow. I know what it is. I just screwed up, but I screwed up my stuff. People are just, and I'm reading a Twitter comment where someone said, I've considered both sides of this. I also recognize the word duty. I want to be clear this up. They had a duty, but that does not stop there. As I said, were they ordered by police to stand down? Police cannot order EMTs to stand down if EMTs deem it's a medical necessity. I can tell you that with 100% certainty. They cannot do it. They've tried. They've actually arrested EMTs that know that, and then they've lost. And the EMTs have won settlements against it. Because EMTs have the right, once they're on scene, once they're called to that scene, the EMT could do whatever they want to the patient. You could have someone that just sliced up people and blah, 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 and they're danger. And you could tell the cops that you need to take the handcuffs off. That's the truth. And a lot of people just don't understand it. It's funny. It's funny. I was going to talk about this whole Eliza shit today, and I'll probably do that tomorrow. And also, there's a big powerlifting, the federation that I compete in. There's a huge scandal. That'll be its own video tomorrow as well, because that's some weird shit, bro. I want to look into it more. I was going to talk a little bit about it tonight, but then I was like, I'm going to wait. It involves, pedophiles working as coaches and all sorts of weird stuff, man. So it's going to be a big story. When I put it all together tomorrow. But I hope that you guys all can possibly go over to Pure Truth Coffee. Please, April, throw it in the chat for me. Buy some coffee, buy a hoodie, buy the yearly Patriotic as F bundle. Again, it costs a lot, but you'll save a shit ton of money. You get free shipping as part of that bundle too. So you're saving, $200 there in shipping alone. Plus you get two free two free bundles plus a 20% off coupon. And if you do our coffee club yearly subscription, or even the 6-month subscription for either of those, you could choose whatever coffee you want. But here's the best part, and I forgot to mention this, you also get free shipping on all your coffee orders as well. So go over, sign up for that. Everyone that has an outstanding coffee order, except Flying High, because we are out of stock until Wednesday when the new beans are coming in. But everyone else's coffee orders will be going out tomorrow. I got to go to bed. If you can't tell, I'm stuttering and stuff. I'm tired. I remember I said I was cutting out soda, so I really did, and sugar. I don't do cookies or anything anymore. And it's kicking my butt, dude. I'm tired all the time. I just drink coffee, and now I'm drinking like a gallon and a half of water a day. I'm training again, so I'm competing where I was, unless the USPA is done. But I was competing. Someone said, think wartime, you need coffee. Yeah, I'm tired. But I'm planning on doing a powerlifting competition. I think it's at the end of April or May in Richmond. So I've started like training for it. Oh, by the way, guess what? Like 100 feet from me, there's a free gym. No joke. A free gym. It's been here the whole time. It's been here for like 20 years. Never knew about it until today. It's free. And it's got a bunch of free weights. It's super old, but literally a free powerlifting gym. Full gym. Isn't that the craziest thing? Sometimes that's what happens when you work as much as I do. You don't even look at who your neighbor is. I'm not joking. A free powerlifting gym right next door. It's a religious gym, but they're not going to preach to me. So that's fine. Anyway, guys, I will see you all tomorrow. I'll be uploading several videos tomorrow. So make sure you check it out. Please, everyone, there's not enough of you guys. PureTruthCoffee.com. We need you guys to buy some stuff. All right?